All right, good morning. Hopefully people have gotten in now. I want to thank you all for being on this. I know this is a very difficult time for many reasons. The economic hit of this whole crisis has certainly been the greatest on small businesses. And it has, it's incredibly difficult. We don't know what the future is going to be in terms of reopening. So that is why the federal government has stepped in and created this new program, the Paycheck Protection Program, to try to help small businesses. But everyone knows this is a unprecedented time. This is a new program. There have been a lot of hiccups, to say the least, in the rollout and getting this going. But the first part of it back with the passage of the CARES Act in late March, it created this PPP program administered by the Small Business Administration. It put we put $349 billion in to fund it. In addition to that, there's also $10 billion for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and also the $17 billion for a Small Business Debt Relief Program. But the biggest focus has been on the PPP program. In Illinois, under the first phase, with the $349 billion federally, there was a little under $16 billion went to small businesses in Illinois, and that was a little less than 70,000 loans. But I understand that there were a lot of frustrations, a lot of businesses who wanted to take advantage of that were not able to. So this past week, Congress passed, and yesterday the president signed into law the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act, which provides an additional $310 billion for PPP loans. So that is where we're at right now. I wanted to bring in the Small Business Administration to talk about it, to answer any questions that you may have on it. So it's $310 billion. There's two set-asides for $30 billion for institutions, lending institutions that are between 10 billion and 50 billion assets, and another 30 billion for those with less than $10 billion in assets. So that's a little bit different. Those set-asides were not in the first tranche of funding. This next round of funding is going to start to be available on Monday. And yesterday I had a meeting like this with the financial institutions to try to help prepare them for it. And today we have this one, and I'm glad that we have a good number of small businesses who have been able to join us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a presentation from the SBA, and then any questions that you have sent in to us, and you can send more questions into the chat function on Zoom. So you can do that while we're going on, and we'll try to answer all the questions that you send in. So first we have Bo Steiner, who is the District Director of Illinois for the U.S. Small Business Administration. He's been at the SBA since 2013 and leads SBA's operations across the state of Illinois. We also have on here David Schroeder, the Senior Vice President of Federal Government Relations with the Community Bankers Association of Illinois. So David may also, I'm not sure if David wants to make any comments at the beginning, but he's certainly here to answer any questions that you may have. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bo to share some information about the programs and the resources, and help out with, then he'll answer some of your questions about PPP. So I'll turn it over to Bo now. Hopefully Bo is, do we have Bo?
Congressman, Bo did confirm yesterday. I'm not sure if he's jumped on yet, but if we want to go ahead, maybe David can offer a couple of remarks just in terms of the banker's perspective, and then from there, I'm happy to go over the programs, but hopefully we have Bo jump on here shortly.
All right, David? Would like to offer a few words, David?
Sure, I am unmuted. Is that correct?
Now you're on now.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, Congressman, I want to thank you for hosting this informative listening session. I also want to say on behalf of myself, as well as the Community Bankers Association of Illinois, that again, as an association, our appreciation for what small businesses do for our economy and for the nation. And I'm particularly proud of how community banks have stepped up during the virus crisis and this challenge and worked together with small businesses. I'm not sure if everyone on the call knows, but community banks make over 50% of all of the small business loans in the country. So the partnership between community banks and the small businesses is particularly important. In fact, it's vital for our economy as well as the nation. It's a very strong partnership. In terms of a little bit more information about myself, kind of waiting for Bo to come in, I have been with the association for a number of years now. I represent them at the federal level with federal regulators as well as our Illinois members of Congress. We have 300 community bank members in the state of Illinois. And again, I feel they do a great job of serving small business. And from an introductory standpoint, that's really all that I have to offer at this point. If Bo's on, I'll defer to him in terms of a description of the various programs. If not, I can certainly comment on a couple things and a couple questions that I know small business people have right now in terms of how to access the program. So I'd be happy to go on, but I'd be, again, happy to defer to Bo if he's here and would like to describe the various programs.
Jacqueline?
I don't think Bo has joined us quite yet, but let's go ahead and just jump into the programs. And David, please, feel free to chime in. And while we get going, if anyone has questions, please do use the chat function. You can send your question in to the whole group, or you can send it directly to David or myself. As many are familiar, there was 3 major small business programs that were made available through the initial round of funding from the CARES Act. There was a Paycheck Protection Program that had $349 billion in funding that was very popular, did experience some challenges with the rollout. But we're getting ready here to open up $310 billion additional dollars starting on Monday, where applications will again begin to be submitted by financial institutions at 9:30 a.m. on Monday. There was also $10 billion made available for economic injury disaster loans and grants. This did provide up to a $10,000 emergency grant to small businesses. What ultimately ended up happening, since there was a large demand for these, applications were being taken in the order that they were being received, and businesses were being provided grants up to $1,000 per employee, capped at $10,000. There's also $17 billion for the Small Business Debt Relief Program for current and new Small Business Administration borrowers. That program is still ongoing if people are in need of small business loans, as well as our current SBA borrowers and need to be able to defer those payments. I know the city of Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois also do have programs, but our presentation today will be mainly focused on the federal programs, but the congressman and our office are always happy to assist small businesses any way we can in getting access to resources. David, I don't know if you want to jump in and provide any information.
Sure. Let me give you some of my observations, and again, if you need to stop me for clarification or whatever, please do. First off, we've heard and read criticisms that are leveled against some of the largest banks in the country regarding how they prioritized their largest borrowing customers, and I think particularly and very, very troublesome for a lack of communication and responsiveness with their smaller business customers. Now, I can only speak for community bankers, and we have 300 within the state of Illinois. But I've spoken with many of them, and I can truly say that they're trying to help small businesses. They're not only trying to help their customers, but they're also trying to help non-customers. I spoke to two of our members yesterday. One bank that has closed 400 of these Paycheck Protection Program loans. And he indicated that many of them have come from their larger bank customers that were not able to get satisfied by the larger institutions. I talked with another one of my smaller bank members, and he indicated that when this program is done, the first round as well as the second round of funding, they will likely have 40% of their loans to customers who are now their customers, but who weren't before the PPP program was rolled out by the SBA. So I think the fact that community banks are stepping up not only for their customers, but for people who have heretofore not been their customers, I think is a good thing and a great opportunity for those that have likely been frustrated in dealing with the larger banks or the regional banks. If I can go on, Jacqueline, just want to make the listeners aware. We polled our members Monday of this week, and we asked them the question, do you have any unapproved PPP loans, and roughly the number. And this was when the funding was exhausted. And 6.3% of our members said that they had funded all of the loans that they had in their pipeline. Only 6.3%. So 94% of our members said that when the first round of funding was exhausted, they had taken care of every application that they had been received. So there's incredible pent-up demand for when this program opens up on Monday morning. And I say that to just to inform those that perhaps do not have their application in right now. You know, generally, I think you can put small businesses in 4 different buckets. First bucket being those that were fortunate enough to not need a paycheck protection loan. Second bucket, those that got them and those loans are funded. Next bucket is you know, those that haven't applied yet. And for those individuals, again, please realize that the community banks now have existing applications that are on their desk waiting for Monday morning at 9:30 to get those inputted and approved by the SBA. So again, you know, either didn't need the loans, you got the loans, you didn't get the loans, but you're in the queue or you haven't applied yet. So I think particularly for those that haven't applied yet, I think the watchwords are patience, persistence, and understanding. And I'll kind of emphasize the word persistence. You know, realize that banks right now have a number of these applications ready to go Monday morning, and we really have no idea how long this funding is going to last. You know, it could be a matter of days. So you need to be persistent to get in, to get to the right people, to get your application in, all the information to the bank that they need to process the loan, and then be able to hopefully move forward, get your loan approved, get it inputted to the SBA, and then get it funded. Jacqueline, I'll turn it back to you if there's any. I see some questions popping up. I can't see them completely on my phone, but I'll be happy to answer any that I can.
Well, thank you, David. We have Bo Steiner now who was on, and I don't know Bo,
good.
if you want to, if there's anything else you want to add before we get to, I see you've got your presentation up there. So, Bo, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Congressman, and apologize for being late here. And appreciate everybody who joined today. Certainly from the standpoint of SBA, we here in Illinois, we really appreciate Congressman Lipinski's support and the staff here to get the word out on these programs. It's super important as we face this both humanitarian and economic crisis that we face right now. And I think the federal team, whether it's Congress, SBA, the Department of Treasury, the administration, we're all focused on how we can best help small businesses to make them, survive and thrive as we come out of, COVID-19. So appreciate everybody's attention today and the opportunity to talk. As has been discussed, we've got a number of, there's been a lot of work done recently. Sorry, a lot of work done recently to add additional appropriation to the PPP program, to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the advance, and wanted to touch on each one of those just so that you're informed on what's going on. But from the standpoint of the PPP, additional $310 billion was added to that, appropriated for that program. As David mentioned, that opens up on Monday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time for application to SBA. In addition, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program received an additional $50 billion, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Program an additional $10 billion. So that's kind of where we are from the standpoint of funding for those programs. And as you can imagine, there is a great deal of interest in all of these. Without further ado, I'll get right into it. From the standpoint of the Paycheck Protection Program, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with it, it is an up to $10 million loan program, where recipients may qualify for up to 100% forgiveness of that loan. It is a loan, though, based on a 2-year term at 1% interest, and it's determined by prior average monthly payroll. So you look back 12 months, take that monthly average, multiply times 2.5, that determines the amount of the loan. As I mentioned, it can be up to 100% forgivable if you use at least 75% of the proceeds for payroll costs, and you maintain your headcount. Businesses and 501c3s, 501c19s with nonprofits with fewer than 500 employees are eligible to participate. And this includes those that are self-employed, sole proprietors, independent contractors. Note that 1099 independent contractors apply on their own behalf, not through the businesses that they work for / with. So really important notation. I'll talk about that in a second as we talk about how you go to apply. As David discussed, there's a wide range of lenders that are participating in the program. Initially, SBA 7A lenders, federally insured depository institutions, credit unions, farm credit system lenders or banks were eligible to participate in the program. In addition, we've added a whole host of other lenders, non-bank lenders, non-depository lenders, fintech lenders to the program to expand the network. As what we've seen is that just the sheer volume of application would overwhelm almost any lender. So expanding the network so that we've got enough lenders to support the demand has been a really big focus of SBA and Treasury. If you are looking to apply for the program, we always encourage you to work with your bank of record as kind of that first stop. However, we also understand that many banks may not be accepting applications at this point because they do have a significant backlog that they're looking at for this second tranche of funds. So if you need to identify another lender, You can certainly go to SBA's website, SBA.gov/Paycheck Protection/find to find other lenders that are participating in the program in your local area. That's one tool. We also have a full list of all the participating lenders across the country on our website as well. So that's just another tool that you need to be aware of. We talked about the eligibility from the size of businesses. Generally speaking, 500 employees or less or fewer. There are some caveats to that related to certain industries like hospitality and food. We also look at revenue-based size standards, alternate size standards. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can qualify as small for the purposes of this program. So, but the general rule is 500 or fewer. The other eligibility requirement that's in place is that you have to have been in business on February 15th of 2020 and had employees for whom you paid salaries and payroll taxes or paid independent contractors. We will continue to accept applications until June 30th or when funds are exhausted. So, so that's kind of the constraints around the program. Well, let's talk about how you apply. From an application standpoint, the 2-page application where you're going to put in your business information, the owner information. You're going to calculate your average monthly payroll costs to input into the form, the number of employees, average monthly employees you have on staff. In addition to that, you'll be making certain certifications that you meet certain eligibility requirements and that you're going to use the funds in accordance with the guidelines around the program. And I'll show you the application in a minute so that you have some insight into it. As far as the lenders are concerned, they can either use that form or they can create their own online portal through which you'll apply. And but it has to have the same general information that's required on the SBA document, the loan application that I'll show you. So really important to note on that front that you may not have to do paper. The other thing I'd say is when you are going to apply, get with your lender, understand their documentation requirements. They may have different, each lender maybe has its own requirements of what they want to see. It could be, hey, we want to see your W-3, or we want to see your Form 940, your IRS Form 940s for your, withholdings. Get with your lender to understand what those documents are. If you're a sole proprietor, it might be the 1040 Schedule C to show your net profit. So get with your lender to understand what those document requirements are. So from the standpoint of payroll costs, you might think, well, that's compensation. Well, it's actually more than just the compensation piece. It is cash compensation, cash tips are equivalent, but also payment for vacation, parental, family, other leave, allowance for separation dismissal, payment for the provision of healthcare benefits, other insurance premiums, retirement contributions, state and local taxes assessed on compensation of employees. So if you think about it, it's kind of like, what are those costs to sustain an employee, on your staff? And those are a lot of the contributors that you can take into account for payroll costs. Note that compensation to employees when you're determining your average monthly payroll is up to a maximum cash compensation of $100,000. So if you pay somebody $125,000, that additional $25,000 would not count for the purpose of that average monthly payroll. And however, it's also important to note that even if you can include that $100,000, even if you provide other non-cash benefits like those healthcare insurance contributions, retirement contributions, those sorts of things. So what doesn't qualify as payroll costs for purpose of calculating eligible loan amount? Pay to 1099 independent contractors. I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. You cannot include 1099 independent contractors because they can apply for the PPP on their own. So just note, those costs don't go into the calculation. Rent doesn't go into calculation, mortgage interest, utilities, payments on other debt, any other expenses that aren't categorized on the previous slide. So again, I say that just to make sure that you're clear on what are eligible expenses that you can use to consider the size for the size of the loan. If you're going to check on, if you have made application already, you're going to want to check with your lender for a status update. David mentioned that many of the lenders, 6%, I think he said, had not exhausted their queue of applications before funding ran out in the previous tranche. So, it's in your interest to get with your lender, understand where you stand in that process, to and where your application sits, just to make sure that they're ready to submit your application on, or they're ready to submit your application on your behalf. But again, you can't check with the SBA on the status of these applications because they're sitting with the private sector lender that you're working with. So you apply for the loan, it's approved. On the back end, what happens is once SBA approves, lenders are required to make initial disbursement within 10 calendar days and full disbursement within 30 calendar days. Now, that initial disbursement starts the clock on the period of forgiveness. So if you're looking to achieve forgiveness, which means that you spend at least 75% of the proceeds on payroll costs, then you may be eligible for up to 100% forgiveness for that loan. That means, and again, payroll costs are what we discussed a moment ago. Additional use of proceeds for these loans, so up to 25% of the proceeds of the loan, you may be able to, you can use on for other specific uses, including mortgage interest payments, rent payments, utility payments, interest payments on any other debt obligations incurred before February 15th, and to refinance an SBA EIDL loan made between January 31st and April 3rd. So, as a borrower, if you want to seek full forgiveness, I encourage you to make sure that you keep really good records on what you're using those proceeds for, and that you're able to provide that documentation to your lender. In addition, I would say talk to your lender and say, hey, what do you want to see? What kind of documents are you interested in seeing as we apply for forgiveness as early as 7 weeks from that date of initial disbursement? All right. So again, you can use the proceeds of the PPP for more than just payroll costs, but you have to keep in mind that you need to use at least 75% of those proceeds in order to qualify for full forgiveness. So hit on that. I wanted to touch on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. As I mentioned, again, we received an additional $50 billion tranche of funding for that program. Initially, we had $7 billion available for it. This is a working capital program where businesses may apply for up to $2 million of working capital. Interest rates 3.75, terms up to 30 years, first payment deferred for 12 months. Small businesses with 500 or fewer employees, most private nonprofits, and also includes sole proprietors and a number of other entities that would qualify for the program. Again, you must have experienced substantial impact due to COVID-19, working capital losses due to the declared disaster. This is a credit-based decision. So whereas the PPP program is fully dependent upon payroll history and demonstrated payroll history, this is a credit decision. So SBA will pull your credit report. We'll look at your credit history as part of the underwriting process. We're going to look at repayment to make sure that your cash flow will support the debt service going forward. It is a loan. From a collateral standpoint, we are going to look to take collateral on loans greater than $500,000. But if you don't have collateral, sufficient collateral, lack of collateral is not a reason for a decline. And from a personal guarantee, loans greater than $200,000 require a personal guarantee, which means that you are pledging your personal assets in support of that loan. Note that, again, I like to contrast with the PPP. The PPP has no collateral requirements, has no personal guarantee requirements. The EIDL Advance is an add-on to the EIDL program that was added as part of the CARES Act. Basically, the intent is to get money in the hands of business owners who are experiencing economic impact due to COVID-19 as quickly as possible. Eligibility is the same as for the economic injury disaster loan. The application process is the same. We have a streamlined application process. And these advances are up to $10,000 based on the number of employees at $1,000 per employee up to a maximum of 10. As part of the application, you will put your routing, your bank account information, routing number into the system, and these funds will be direct deposited into your account within days of your initial application. Now, those of you that have applied are probably like, hey, it took a little bit of time to get my advance. 100% true. We, as you can imagine, again, we had significant application inflow, and working through that, we continue to work through that backlog. We're about 2 weeks in to the disbursements happening, so we expect to see continued advances go out to our small business owners. Last thing I'll say on the advance is that this is basically a grant. So even if you're denied for the EIDL, you receive the advance, you do not have to pay it back. Likewise, if you're approved for the economic injury disaster loan, what happens is the amount of that grant is reduced from the principal of your loan. So again, this is a grant program to help support those short-term capital needs that businesses may have. As I mentioned, we're not currently accepting applications. However, with the additional funds, we're hoping that we'll open up the application portal again. It's a streamlined loan application. If and when we do open up the application, it's totally based on your inputs and your attestations to your financial numbers, your revenues, cost of goods sold, those sorts of things that help support the determination of the loan amount. You aren't required to upload any documentation, so you don't have to upload tax returns or financial records, those sorts of things. If we need additional information, a loan officer will reach out to you and request that information. You make application for both of these programs at the same time. So you go through just a single application, you apply for both the EIDL and the advance. And you will receive an email notification upon submission of your application, giving you an application number, and so that you've got that for your records. We do accept paper applications. However, that will really slow down the process, and we encourage everyone to use the online electronic loan application. It will be much faster to go through the process. Now, I know many people have applied already to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and you're kind of like, hey, I haven't heard anything. I would refer back to what David mentioned. We've had an incredible number of applications that have come through. So please be patient. Just because you haven't heard anything doesn't mean that there's bad news. It just means that we're working through the queue, first in, first out, on all the loans that we've received. If you are approved, you'll receive notification from SBA. You'll be asked to go into a portal to accept the loan, and then you'll go through the closing process where you'll fill out certain documents to close the loan. And we typically see 5 days from loan closing to disbursement of that loan. So that's kind of the process. I will have some information where you can go if you want a status update on your particular loan. A couple of notes here, just making sure that you've got all the information correct and that you've double checked the information you enter is going to be really helpful so that there aren't errors that will slow down the process. SBA, through certain calculations that our underwriting system uses, will determine the loan amount. If you determine you're approved and you determine, hey, this isn't enough or this is too much, you can go back to the loan officer and request either additional funds or less. That will just require additional documentation to support your additional request, the additional amount of request. If your loan is declined, you do have a 6-month period wherein you can request reconsideration. So if you are declined, you'll receive a letter that tells you the reason why you were declined, and will provide you with additional information on how to request reconsideration. Okay, 2 other quick programs I wanted to touch on. First is SBA Debt Relief. If you have an SBA loan, that's a 7A 504 microloan, SBA will pay principal and interest on those loans for a 6-month period. If you make a new 7A, or you're issued a new 7A 504 microloan prior to September 27th of 2020, you are also eligible to receive this debt relief. As a borrower, it should be transparent to you. SBA is working with the lenders to pull together the payment information, timelines, all that sort of thing. But know that you are eligible and should receive this benefit as an SBA borrower. If you have questions, reach out to your lender. And then the last debt program I'll discuss is the Express Bridge Loan Program. This is a pilot program for COVID-19. If you have an existing relationship with an SBA Express lender, you have the opportunity to apply for a loan of up to $25,000 to help you meet your working capital needs. This is a normal SBA loan program, so fees, normal SBA loan terms apply. This loan has terms of up to 7 years, interest rate negotiated with the lender based on SBA's criteria. But again, another tool at your disposal to help you navigate your working capital needs during this challenging time. Then lastly, we'll talk about assistance from SBA and our partners. We at SBA fund a network of resource partners who can provide technical assistance to small businesses and entrepreneurs to help navigate these challenges that they're facing. That can be anything from, hey, which of these programs is best to me? How do I apply? How do I pull together my financials? These organizations are trained on the process and they can provide that assistance, as well as helping businesses navigate the tactical and other operational challenges that they're facing during this time to get through the next 2 weeks, next 2 months, so that hopefully on the other end of this shelter in place and the COVID-19, you're prepped and in a position to continue to grow, expand, and thrive in the future. These include the Illinois Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Women's Business Development Centers, Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and you can find those entities at SBA.gov/local assistance for your closest partner who can assist you. And with that, this is SBA's website. If you go to SBA.gov/coronavirus, it has a whole wealth of information on SBA programs. I would also point you to the Treasury has a site, Treasury, it's the CARES site for them, where they have a bunch of documentation as well. If you're interested in the PPP program, I encourage you to go to either the Treasury site or SBA's website to get more information. You can find the application, those sorts of things. Let me just pull this up real quick. I did want to show you all the application form. It's this 2-page application, and then the rest of it is really instructions on how to fill the form out. As I mentioned, some lenders may have their own online portal system that they use. Just a couple things I wanted to point you to is one attestation you need to make, and this is going to be unique to each business, but that's that current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. I don't think this program was intended to be a windfall for businesses. It's really helped support their payroll and payroll cost needs. It's not an unlimited resource, so as you look at what your needs are, just encourage you to really think hard about that. that part of your certification. It also talks to what the funds will be used for and other requirements of the program. As I mentioned, the Treasury site here has a whole bunch of different documents that I would refer you to, including the borrower application form, affiliation, so how does affiliation work, how to calculate loan amounts, also the program rules, which if you are a borrower, I would highly encourage you to take a look just to be familiar with the requirements of the program. And I also note that, you know, we do have a search tool here, find an eligible lender. If you click on that, it'll take you to SBA's website where you can search by zip code on lenders in your area. So with that, I want to get to the questions. So appreciate everybody's time, and hopefully we can answer some of these questions.
Well, thanks for the overview, Bo. Congressman, you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to thank Bo for the thorough presentation there. It's very helpful. But I'm going to turn it to Jacqueline now, who's going to go through the questions that we received. And if there's any more questions you have, please submit them through the chat function of Zoom here. So Jacqueline, why don't you take it away with the questions?
Thank you. Yeah, so I know a common question, Renee asked this question, and I received a couple of private messages too about it. You know, some people that bank with larger banks have found it frustrating working with them for the PPP, and have recommended applying to smaller banks, you know, like the ones that David had talked about that he represents, but one cannot apply to more than one lender at a time according to the process. Bo, David, do you guys have any recommendations if people originally had submitted their application through a larger lender and now maybe want to try to work with community bank or someone else? And David, you're on mute.
Mute me. Okay, that's actually a great question that I'd like to ask Bo in terms of you know, small businesses that are trying to get this funding and you know are multi-tracking. You know, what happens if they're get approved by more than one lender? Is that an issue, and how do the small businesses handle that?
Yeah, so my understanding is the way this system works is that basically for each business, the first application that is submitted and the SBA receives and is approved will be approved. All others will be declined.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, I think, you know, that's the way the system is supposed to work, but I think it's important for everybody to note that you're only eligible to receive one PPP loan per applicant. So, you know, if there is some kind of wonkiness that happens or something, you know, just be reminded that you can only receive one in order to maximize the impact across the broader small business community.
Okay. So with that in mind, if a small business is not hearing back from, let's say, a larger institution, I'd certainly recommend that they apply somewhere else, given the fact that only one application will go through and get funded. I think the point that I'd like to make here is that these funds are limited. We're not sure when they're going to run out. Small businesses really can't wait if they're not getting communication back from their lender. So I would recommend that they multi-track.
Renee has a follow-up here that she just sent. She says, you know, you have to attest that you haven't applied to another lender. I also do know some of the larger lenders have suggested me to go into other lenders. Bo, any comments on that, you know, about having to attest you haven't applied to another lender, or what you'd recommend for people in Renee's situation?
What? I'm sorry, I couldn't totally understand. I didn't hear everything on the question.
Sure. So, you know, there was the recommendation made to potentially work with a smaller lender, even if you maybe started your process with a larger lender. Renee raised the point that you have to attest that you have not applied to another lender for the PPP program. You know, how do you suggest kind of people in her situation move forward if a large lender is saying, hey, you might want to go somewhere else, but there is still this requirement where to attest you haven't applied to another lender?
I don't think everything that I've read doesn't say that you attest that you've not applied multiple times, it attests that you will not receive multiple PPP loans. I think that's an important distinction. And from what my understanding from my leadership has been that you can apply to multiple, but you cannot accept multiple, and that's what the rules state, is you cannot accept. There's no guidance related to how many times you can apply.
Great, that's helpful. One other question we received is the SBA going to see what businesses have already received funding? I know you touched on this a little bit on your presentation, Bo, but how is it that some businesses receive both PPP and EIDL while others have not yet?
Yeah, so with the EIDL, it was first in, first out, right? So the sooner you applied, the sooner you would get to a decision. That process is still ongoing. So, you know, I think we're just working through the queue on that front. So you may see some businesses starting to receive those EIDL loans. As far as, you know, EIDL, PPP, and the interaction of the two, you can receive both under certain circumstances. So the whole idea is that if you use the EIDL for one use of proceeds and you use the PPP for a separate use of proceeds, as an example, payroll, then that would be a situation where you can take advantage of both. However, if you are using them for the same proceeds, same use of proceeds, so say you were using EIDL, you want to use EIDL for payroll, then the expectation is when you apply and you've received that loan, when you apply for the PPP, that you would refinance that EIDL into the PPP loan. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I think there's also on that part, they were asking if they're going to see what businesses have already received funding. And I believe there was a recent announcement by Treasury that they are going to publish the monthly reports with details about the recipients of the new lending programs. So.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I haven't received guidance on that.
Okay. Question that we received, you know, what programs, I guess, are available for sole proprietors? From Ron. And I do know, you know, unemployment, you know, was expanded under the CARES Act, where people can go, if you're a sole proprietor, gig economy employee, or self-employed, you do have the ability in Illinois to go apply for unemployment insurance, which was expanded. And that program for people who are self-employed is going to be rolling out here shortly in the portal. The state of Illinois Committed will be open by May 11th. So that's just one alternative. But from the SBA perspective, is there anything that they should know, Bo?
Yeah, so sole proprietor is eligible to apply for both the EIDL and the PPP. So, you know, I'd say the key element there is that, you know, if you apply for unemployment and then you're on unemployment and then you receive the PPP, a PPP loan, then you would have to report that income, because it is income replacement in the case of sole proprietor, in Illinois, the Illinois Department of Employment Security, because you can't double dip, so to speak, as far as, you know, receiving both of those as both of those financial resources.
Okay. Hopefully that helps provide some clarification for Ron. Kelly had asked about what was the additional allocation for the EIDL portion in the most recent relief package. I think you did cover that, but you mind sharing that again?
Sure. Yeah, the EIDL received an additional appropriation of $50 billion, and the EIDL advance received an additional appropriation of $10 billion.
All right. Another question that I've received is, how many weeks do you have to exhaust PPP funds, from Christina? She says, I realize the clock starts after 7 weeks.
So, I'd say the key element here is the forgiveness component to it. So to maximize the benefit of the program, you need to, the basically period that they're going to look at is that 8-week period following initial disbursement. And that is the period within which you would have to spend at least 75% of the proceeds on payroll costs and up to 25% on those other eligible expenses. Anything that's not forgiven converts into, is basically terms out on the 2 years at 1% interest for the remainder of that amount.
Okay. This question, similar to one previously, but I received this one privately. What is available for sole proprietors and small businesses that receive a 1099 but don't have a payroll or employees, like independent brokers, estheticians, hair salons, and others? Any recommendations for people who can apply for the PPP because they don't have a payroll, but they're sole proprietors?
Yeah, sure. So most sole proprietors, if they have their own business, will file a Schedule C or some similar Schedule F, those kinds of forms as part of their 1040. And on that Schedule C, they'll report net profit. That net profit amount is what they will use from the standpoint of calculating their average monthly payroll for kind of that calculation on the front end. And then on the request for forgiveness on the back end, they can use up to 8/52 of that prior year net profit as individual compensation that can be forgiven. Realize that many businesses may not have filed their taxes yet because the filing deadline was pushed. So just that whoever those applicants would need to at least pull together that 1040 Schedule C so they can report that to the lender.
All right, thank you for that, Bo. We got more questions that we received here. Can you apply for both programs? And I think you already answered that you can. And do taxes have to be paid on these monies for the PPP and EIDL?
So the EIDL is a loan, so you don't, you're going to be just paying that over time. From the standpoint of the loan forgiveness, that was specifically called out in the CARES Act as not being taxable for the purposes of your tax returns and all that. So whereas typical forgiveness would involve some kind of tax implications, the CARES Act calls out that it is not for the purposes of PPP and the EIDL advance.
Okay, so it sounds like you do not have to pay taxes then on any of those three programs.
Correct.
Okay. There's a request. Is it possible to receive a copy of your deck, your presentation deck, Bo? Is that something we can share with our participants?
Yeah, absolutely.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, Mary asked, for the PPP loan, it requires you maintain employees. I have 2 employees that rarely show up to work, taking advantage of the situation. Is it just the number of employees we need to maintain or the exact employees we have to keep paying? Any restriction on the number of hours they have to be working?
So the guidance around the forgiveness component is still in work, I'd say, but at a very high level, the 2 key components that are going to contribute to the forgiveness are 75% of the proceeds used for payroll costs, number 1, and number 2, maintaining your head count. I would note that it's not the people that you have on staff, it's the number of people that you have. So if you have Jane Smith prior to February 15th, and then she goes and does something else, leaves, you can hire somebody else, John Doe, and he would still contribute towards your headcount requirement.
All right. I know we had another question too that I wanted to come back to that Bernard had asked. He says he's hearing a lot of concerns. I think that's probably more broadly to the group. Hearing a lot of concerns from small business owners. They can't get employees to come back because they're making more money from unemployment. It's being problematic for employers. You know, are we aware of this problem, and is there any resolution being discussed? So I guess I'll open it up to Bo or David or Congressman too, if you want to weigh in.
Well, let me take that. This has been something that I've heard many times, and there are a number of us who have in Congress who have been discussing this and trying to figure out. First of all, it was set in place, so it wasn't going to be taken back, set in the CARES Act. But if there's any sort of extension of that, I'm sure that it will not again be like that, because I do understand that it does pay more in some states to be on unemployment, with the federal government putting an extra $600 on top of what someone would normally be receiving, and we don't want to have that be a disincentive for people to go to work. But at this point, it's not as much of an issue. But as things open up, it's going to be certainly more and more problematic.
And I know that the $600 additional unemployment benefit does also terminate that supplement at the end of July. So July 31, that extra $600 a week will no longer be available through unemployment.
And Jacqueline, if I could, I received guidance from IDES on this specific topic, and it'd probably be helpful. I'll just read it because that.
Oh, please, yes.
When someone files for unemployment, IDES sends a notice of claim to benefit chargeable employer. This is the employer's first opportunity to raise issues with the department about the claim. During a claim series, an employer can continue to raise issues about a claimant's continued eligibility for benefit. Section 603 of the Unemployment Insurance provides that an individual is ineligible for benefits if they refuse a reasonable job or work. In this scenario, we'd expect employers to raise the issue with IDES, who will investigate. And if someone quits their job, they were required to tell IDES that fact on the unemployment claim, which will usually prevent them from collecting. If the individual lies on their claim, e.g. tells them they're laid off due to lack of work, that would be considered unemployment fraud, which comes with a host of civil and criminal penalties. So that's what I got from IDES.
Great. Well, that's really helpful. Thank you, Bo, for sharing that information. I have one last question. I think we've addressed them all except this last one. The question I have is, what happens if you operate a bar or restaurant where you can't maintain a head count because it's all cash business, and then you also don't qualify for maintaining payroll and health benefits? Any suggestion for folks that are cash business that can't qualify for maintaining payroll and health benefits?
I mean, I think, a couple things. One is certainly would encourage people to reach out to like a small business development center or some other resource to just business advice from them. I think that would be the initial step that I would encourage. As far as other financial resources, again, that's going to be so case by case. We can certainly work with individual and businesses that have questions about maybe what might be best for them separately, but it's hard to guess exactly the circumstances.
Yeah, you touched on small business resources. Are there resources that you recommend for people kind of looking for guidance that are available through SBA?
Yeah, the Illinois Small Business Development Center network provides really great support and services to small business owners. As does SCORE, the Women's Business Development Center. So, if people go to SBA.gov /local-assistance, you can find, based on your zip code, you can certainly find a resource. If you're if you need help, you can also email us at illinois.do@sba.gov, just requesting, hey, I'd like to connect to my local resource partner, and we will make a warm handoff for that business owner to an appropriate resource partner that we find.
That's great information. Really appreciate that. I know we're kind of over on time, so we want to move to kind of wrapping up. I know David has some things he wants to share with us.
Yeah, I just have a quick suggestion for the congressman's small businesses, and that is move quickly on this. If you need this relief, you need to move quickly. You need to be resourceful. These funds are not going to last a long time based on everything we're hearing. So don't delay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great insight, David. I mean, I have heard that, funds could move very quickly, as fast as, 48 hours, to 72 hours. So certainly would urge folks to, get in touch with their financial institution or seek out another one that can help them access the relief.
Definitely.
Bo, any final comments before we have the congressman close us out?
No, thanks again for having me today. Congressman, thank you for having me and for pulling this together. Again, we really appreciate all the challenges that y'all face out there, and we hope everybody's doing as well as you can. But know that if you have questions, we have a team here in Illinois, and we want to be able to support you however we can. So reach out to us at illinois.do at SBA.gov, and we'll get back in touch with you as quickly as we possibly can. But again, thanks, Jacqueline, and thank you, Congressman. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Bo, for all your work of everyone at SBA. It's a very difficult time for all, and handling this new program, as I know it's been a tremendous amount of work for you, for everyone at the SBA. So thank you for what you're doing in a very difficult situation. Thank you for being on here this morning. We would like to get your presentation, and we can post it up on our website also, because I think it's a very helpful presentation there. So thank you, Bo, and thank you, David, for being with us this morning. Very helpful. Again, for the community bankers, it's also a tough situation to deal with, and trying to figure out how this all works. Everyone's trying to figure out at the same time, and I know the guidance. Always waiting every day for more guidance, and still waiting for some. So thank you for making it possible for so many small businesses to stay in business. So thanks so much for what you do. Thank you for being with us this morning. And everyone who's on this today, thank you for being here. And please reach out to our office with any other questions that you may have, any issues, any problems. Let others know who were not on this that they can come to us for resources. Point them to us for any questions they have. As I said, we'll put that slide deck up on our website, and I think that could be helpful in of itself to small businesses. But thank you all very much. Thank you, Jacqueline, for moderating here today. You did an excellent job. And if no one else has anything, I will sign off. I'll hand it over to Jacqueline. Maybe Jacqueline can wrap up here.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us again today. If you need to contact the Congressman's office directly, you can reach us at dc.lipinski@mail.house.gov. Our office is also open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in the Chicago location. And you can reach us there if you need any assistance. We're happy to provide you help if you're having trouble navigating or connecting you with any of the SBA resources that Bo has gone over, or helping you try to work with the bank. So appreciate everyone's attendance. We will make this recording available to all the participants, and also be sharing this recording on our website along with those slide decks. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.